Shalom Aleichem. We are continuing in the third chapter of Mishnah Sukkah, all about the Arba Minim, and we are in Mishnah Hay, chapter 3, Mishnah 5. Etrog gozel, a stolen etrog, veyavish, or dried out pasul, cannot be used for the mitzvah, as we've explained the past 2 days. Shel ashera, if it was from a tree that had been worshipped as a avodah zarah. Vishel ir hanidachat, or it belonged to somebody in the city which was convicted of doing avodah zarah. Most people in the city doing avodah zarah, so the din there is they burn all of the property of that city, including the esrogim. Puzzle. These two are also puzzle. It's as if they don't exist. They're asur behana. They cannot be utilized. Shel orla. There's a new one. If it's orla, the first 3 years after tree is planted, puzzle, because a orla, like avodah zarah, is asur behana, cannot be used the first 3 years. Vishel truma tmeya. Now, if it's truma, now recall truma is the portion given to the kohanim, given to the priests. And if it's truma tmeya, puzzle cannot be used even by a kohen, because kohanim cannot use truma tmeya. They have to. They can actually burn it as fuel, but they cannot eat it or use it for the mitzvah in the case of an etrog. V'shel truma tahora, if the etrog is truma, but it's pure, it's tahora, so it could technically be eaten by a kohen. Lo yitl, you're not supposed to take it to do the mitzvah. V'im natal kasher, but b'diavad, if a kohen used this etrog of truma, it would be okay. But he's not supposed to if he has a different etrog. Now, the reason is we don't want the etrog to become wet and become tameh. And as we're going to see, it was typically that the lulav and the other species were put into a bowl of water to keep them fresh and moist. So they'd typically be wet or have some sort of moisture. It could get on the etrog, and then it would be muchshir l'kabel tuma. Once fruits get wet, crops get wet, they can accept ritual contamination, and the truma might become tameya, in which case it is asur, cannot be used. V'shel demai. Now, demai, we had a whole masechta about demai. It means da mai. It's produce where there's a doubt if all of the tithes have been properly taken. So Beit Shammai Poslin, Beit Shammai says you can't use it. We don't know if it was properly tithed, and if it's not, you can't use it. Beit Hillel machshirin. Beit Hillel allows it. And in the Gemara, they explain because Beit Hillel says that demai, there are some allowances. Because most of the Amayarites, most of the people who weren't so learned, did in fact take the tithes properly. It's just a minority that we're worried about. And because of that, the rabbis were makel in certain circumstances. For instance, you could feed demai to poor people or to soldiers. So since there are some allowances, then they would, Beit Hillel says it would still be kosher b'diavad. V'shel Meiser Sheni. We also had him talk about Meiser Sheni b'Yerushalayim. And in Yerushalayim, recall, all of the Meiser Sheni produce must be taken and eaten in Yerushalayim. Lo yitl, you should not take it even in Yerushalayim. V'im natal kasher. But if he did take a Meiser Sheni etrog with his arba minim in Yerushalayim, it is kosher b'diavad. Not supposed to, but only in Yerushalayim he is yotzei the mitzvah, because Meiser Sheni cannot be eaten or used even for your arba minim outside of Yerushalayim. Now Mishnah Vav continues about the etrog. Alta chazozit ol rubo. If the etrog got little blisters on most of its surface, or nitla pitmato, or the pitum was removed. Now, one end of the etrog has an oketz, that's the stem where it connected to the tree, and the other end, some etrogim have pitum, some do not. Those that never had a pitum, it's not a problem, but those that did have a pitum, it's sort of a remnant of the original flower that turned into the fruit. It has to retain that pitum to be used for the mitzvah. Niklaf, if it was peeled, the skin was peeled off the etrog, or nistok, it was split, there was like a slice into it. Nikav, there was a hole through it, v'chaser kol shehu, and there's something missing as a result, puzzle. So any sort of cut or damage where something is missing, it's no longer good to use for the mitzvah. Now the Mishnah contrasts alta chazozit ol meuto, if there were blisters on a minority of the etrog, nitol ukso, or the stem part, that little green stem remnant was taken off. Nikav, there was a hole in it, v'lo chaser kol shehu, and nothing was missing. For example, there was a really thin needle that somebody stabbed into the etrog, but l'maisa, there's a little hole, but there's really nothing missing. Kosher. So in these cases, none of the critical items are missing. Now the Bartanura actually explains that if the hole or the damage is greater than an isar, a small coin, then even if nothing's missing, it's still a problem. Now the Mishnah here concludes, Etrog hakushi, an etrog from kush. That means it's a black, dark etrog puzzle. That's not a kosher etrog. It's not our green and yellow etrogim we're familiar with. V'hayaruk karti, if it's green like a leek, it's mamish, it's really a green one. Rabbi Meir machshir, Rabbi Meir says it's kosher. Rabbi Yehuda posler, Rabbi Yehuda says it's not. And the Mefarshim explain, in kush, where all of the etrogim are dark, then that's normal and everyone expects it. It doesn't look shocking to anybody. So your etrog akushi would still be kosher. It's only in other places where etrogim are normal colors, then one with this bizarre dark color, which would look very out of place and not be hither anymore, that would be a problem. And the Mefarshim also explain that this very green one, if it's going to become yellow, it's going to ripen and become yellow, that's certainly fine. It's only if it's going to be green and stay green, that's sort of a developmental problem in the etrog, then it would be possible according to Rabbi Yehuda. Yashar kochachem, sei gesund.